Section 1. The diagnosis. You open your eyes. The room is still dark. Before your feet even touch the floor, before you have taken your first conscious breath of the day, your hand reaches out in the shadows. It searches for the glowing rectangle of glass and metal resting on your nightstand. You unlock the screen. Instantly, the blinding light pierces your retinas. Instantly, the digital chaos floods into your sacred inner sanctuary. Emails, notifications, outrage, the curated, fake lives of strangers, the demands of a world that does not care about your soul, only your attention. In a fraction of a second, your heart rate spikes. A subtle, subterranean drip of cortisol enters your bloodstream. You have not even left your bed, yet your mind is already at war. You are already exhausted. This is not a biological accident. This is the architecture of the modern condition. You are suffering from an invisible epidemic. It is not an epidemic of the body. You have more calories, more shelter, and more physical safety than any generation of men in the history of human civilization. You are suffering from the epidemic of the fragile mind. Look at your life. Look at the chronic, lingering pain that follows you like a shadow. It is a pervasive, underlying sense of weakness, a quiet overwhelm that paralyzes you when faced with even the most minor daily friction. You sit down to work, to study, to build your empire, and within 5 minutes, an invisible pressure builds in your chest. A whisper in the back of your mind begs for an escape, begs for a hit of dopamine, begs for distraction. You feel paralyzed by a mountain of tasks that, in reality, are nothing more than typing on a keyboard or making a phone call. Why does a delayed text message feel like a betrayal? Why does a difficult conversation feel like a physical threat? Why does a single day of hard work leave you completely shattered, reaching for digital anesthetics, junk food, and cheap pleasures to numb the void? To understand the disease, you must understand the environment that bred it. We must examine the complete eradication of genuine physical survival threats in the 21st century. For thousands of years, the human nervous system was calibrated in the crucible of nature. The ancient man, the Stoic warrior, the Shaolin monk, their minds were honed by the constant, brutal reality of survival. Freezing winters, raging predators, the very real threat of starvation, their brains evolved to scan the horizon for danger, to trigger the fight or flight response only when the stakes were life or death. Today, the predators are gone. The winters are held back by thermostats. The food is delivered to your door with the tap of a screen. But your brain, that ancient, primal threat detection machine, has not changed. Deprived of real monsters to fight, the untrained mind begins to manufacture phantoms. It takes the immense, ancestral survival energy meant to fight off a tiger, and it attaches it to a sarcastic comment from a coworker. It attaches it to a drop in your social media metrics. It attaches it to the sheer boredom of a quiet room. Because you lack a genuine struggle, your mind has redefined the baseline of suffering. It has hallucinated existential crises out of mere inconveniences. You have been conditioned by a soft world to interpret discomfort as trauma. And because you view discomfort as trauma, your entire existence has become defined by avoidance rather than mastery. You arrange your entire life to avoid feeling uncomfortable. You avoid the cold. You avoid the silence. You avoid the heavy lifting, both physical and mental. And in doing so, you have built a prison of comfort, a padded cell where you are completely safe, but entirely powerless. Society sees your pain. The modern world sees your exhaustion. And what is its solution? The modern world hands you the illusion of mental health hacks. We live in the era of toxic positivity, the era of the self-care industry. You are told to stand in front of a mirror and recite daily affirmations. I am strong, I am capable, I am at peace. But words spoken into a mirror without the heavy lifting of action are just hollow echoes. Your subconscious mind is not stupid. It listens to you recite those affirmations, and it knows you are lying. It knows you hit the snooze button 3 times this morning. It knows you surrendered to your impulses last night. You cannot trick your own soul into believing you are a warrior if you live the life of a coward. The modern narrative tells you to protect your energy, to avoid triggers, to build a safe space where nothing can offend or challenge you. Do you not see the trap? By seeking constant emotional comfort, you do not cure your fragility. You weaponize it against yourself. By demanding a life without triggers, you ensure that absolutely everything will trigger you. You become a creature of glass, terrified of the slightest breeze. This is the false security of the modern age. It wraps you in cotton wool and tells you that you are healing, while your spiritual muscles atrophy and wither away to nothing. The Shaolin masters understood a fundamental truth that modern therapy often forgets. True peace is not the absence of war. True peace is the ability to remain completely still in the middle of the storm. When you realize that the soft cures have failed you, you might turn to the other extreme. You turn to motivation. You open YouTube. You watch videos of men screaming at you to grind, to hustle, to wake up at 4 a.m. and conquer the world. You listen to the cinematic music. You watch the fast cuts. For 10 minutes, you feel a surge of electricity in your veins. You feel like a king. You feel unstoppable. You tell yourself, tomorrow, everything changes. But tomorrow comes. The alarm rings. The room is cold. The cinematic music is gone. And you are exactly the same person you were yesterday. Why? Because motivation is a biological lie. Motivation is nothing more than an emotional peak, a temporary spike in neurochemicals designed to initiate action, not to sustain it. Relying on emotional peaks to build your life is like trying to build a brick house on the waves of the ocean. It is a guaranteed formula for inconsistency, burnout, and eventual collapse. When the emotion fades, and it always fades, you are left with the harsh reality of the work. If you need a video to make you do the work, you are a slave to the video. Motivation is an emotion. Iron is a structure. The monk does not wake up at 3 a.m. to sweep the temple courtyard because he feels motivated. He sweeps the courtyard because sweeping the courtyard is what he does. His actions are entirely divorced from his emotional state. He has built a structure of iron that holds him up when the winds of fatigue and doubt try to knock him down. This brings us to the most painful realization of all, the harsh truth of control. Right now, you believe you are the master of your mind. You believe you are the one making the choices. But look closely. Observe the mechanics of your daily life. When your phone buzzes, your hand reaches for it automatically. You do not choose to look. The reflex bypasses your conscious will entirely. When you feel stressed, your hand reaches for the junk food, or the alcohol, or the infinite scroll. When the work gets difficult, your mind instantly generates an excuse, a justification, a perfectly logical reason why you should quit and try again tomorrow. And you listen to it. You obey it. Acknowledge the painful reality. Your mind is currently a master of you. It dictates your actions through a continuous, exhausting cycle of urges and fears. It behaves like an unchained, wild animal, dragging you by the leash through the dirt of your own impulses. Your mind is supposed to be a sword, a precise, sharp tool that you wield to carve your will into the world. Instead, it is a dull, heavy stone that you are forced to carry on your back. It is heavy with anxiety about a future you cannot control. It is heavy with regret about a past you cannot change. It is heavy, with the static noise of 1,000 different algorithms, all fighting for a sliver of your attention. You are not sick, you are untrained. You are a king who has been overthrown by his own servants, living as a peasant in his own castle. But the throne can be reclaimed. This requires a radical pivot in your understanding of the world. A complete inversion of the modern philosophy of comfort. We must pivot to resilience. We must introduce the core thesis of the ancient path. True psychological power, the kind of power that allows a Stoic to stand tall in the face of death, the kind of power that allows a Shaolin monk to endure the unendurable, does not come from removing the burdens of life. It does not come from finding a lighter load. It comes from systematically, aggressively, and ruthlessly strengthening the spine that carries it. You must stop asking the universe for an easier path. The easy path is crowded with weak men leading lives of quiet desperation. You must ask for the strength to walk the heavy path. You must recognize that the anxiety you feel is not a disease to be cured with a pill or a soft word. It is the raw, unrefined energy of your own life force, desperately waiting for you to give it a direction. The discomfort you run from is not your enemy. Discomfort is the fire of the forge, and you are the raw iron. Left in the damp, comfortable soil of modern life, the iron will rust, it will corrode, it will turn to red dust and blow away in the wind, leaving nothing behind. But, thrust into the blinding heat of the forge, placed upon the hard, unforgiving surface of the anvil, struck over and over again by the heavy hammer of extreme discipline, the impurities are burned away, the weakness is violently expelled. What remains is no longer raw, fragile iron. What remains is steel, unbending, unbreakable, cold, sharp, and perfectly aligned with its purpose. You have spent your entire life avoiding the fire. You have spent your entire life running from the hammer. It is time to step into the flames. It is time to understand the profound mechanics of the ancient mind. It is time to look at the demons of distraction, laziness, and modern chaos, and realize that they are not here to destroy you. They are the very weights you will use to build your strength. The diagnosis is clear. The modern mind is shattered, but the cure has been waiting for thousands of years, buried beneath the digital noise, guarded by the shadows of the ancients. Listen closely. The forging process is about to begin. Section 2. The Ancient Principle. To understand the mechanics of this ancient power, we must journey into the deepest chambers of martial philosophy. In the ancient texts of the internal martial arts, there is a concept that serves as the foundation of all human movement, all human power, and all human endurance. It is a single, terrifyingly simple word, yi. In the weak, diluted language of the modern world, it is translated simply as intention. But this translation is a shadow. It completely misses the sheer, violent force of the original meaning. Yi is not a wish. Yi is not a goal written on a whiteboard. Yi is not the fleeting desire you feel when you watch a motivational video. Yi is the absolute, uncompromising, authoritarian command of the conscious mind over the physical vessel. In the Shaolin tradition, there is a maxim: where yi goes, qi follows. Where qi flows, blood flows. Where blood flows, power manifests. Yi is the spear tip of your consciousness. It is the supreme commander. When your lungs are burning, when your legs are trembling, when your biological instincts are screaming at you to drop to your knees and surrender to the pain, Yi is the silent, glowing force in the center of your skull that says, "No, we step forward." It is a state of command, completely detached from fleeting emotions. It does not care if you are sad. It does not care if you are tired. It does not care if the algorithmic demons in your pocket are begging for your attention. Yi simply decides the trajectory, and the body has no choice but to obey. Look at the modern man. Look at his Yi. It is scattered. It is shattered into 1,000 microscopic fragments. His intention is pulled in 100 different directions, by notifications, by outrage, by lust, by cheap entertainment. Because his Yi is fractured, his energy, his ki is violently dispersed into the digital void. He has no concentrated power. He is a king who has handed the steering wheel of his life over to a chaotic mob of biological impulses and corporate algorithms. To forge an iron mind, you must gather the scattered fragments of your intention. You must recall your Yi from the digital wasteland. You must forge it back into a single, blinding point of focus. But focus alone is not enough to survive the chaos of the modern world. A sharp spear is useless if the warrior wielding it is standing naked in a rain of arrows. You need a fortress. Half a world away from the Shaolin temples, separated by vast oceans and towering mountains, the ancient Stoics discovered the exact same spiritual technology. They understood that the world is a storm of chaos. They understood that you cannot control the weather, you cannot control the economy, you cannot control the opinions of the mob, and you cannot control the infinite scroll of digital noise. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on the face of the earth, sat in a freezing tent on the muddy front lines of Germania. Surrounded by the brutal realities of war, the threat of plague, and the crushing weight of an empire, he wrote in his private journal about a sanctuary. He called it the Inner Citadel. The Inner Citadel is the impenetrable fortress of the mind. It is a sacred space within your own consciousness that belongs entirely to you. Outside the walls of this citadel, the world is burning. Outside, there are deadlines, angry emails, economic collapse, social media outrage, and the chaotic noise of a society descending into madness. But inside the walls, absolute silence, perfect tranquility, a sanctuary untouched by the external chaos. The modern man has left the gates of his citadel wide open. He has allowed the digital demons to march right into his throne room. He allows a comment from a stranger on the internet to enter his sacred space and dictate his heart rate. He allows the news cycle to sit on his throne and command his emotions. He is a refugee in his own mind. To forge an iron mindset, you must expel the invaders. You must draw up the bridge. You must drop the heavy iron gates. You must realize that no external force, no person, no algorithm, and no tragedy has the power to enter your inner citadel unless you personally hand them the key. But how do the Stoics and the monks keep the gates closed? How do they filter the poison of the outside world? They do it through the supreme psychological weapon, the separation of event and judgment. This is where Eastern detachment and Western Stoicism intersect in a blinding flash of truth. They prove a singular, undeniable law of human psychology. Suffering is not inherent to an event. Suffering is a choice. Suffering is constructed entirely by your perception of that event. The rain falling from the sky is just water. It is a biological, atmospheric fact. It is your judgment that calls it a terrible storm and ruins your day. The words spoken by your enemy are just sound waves vibrating through the air. It is your judgment that interprets them as an insult and triggers your rage. The smartphone screen in your hand is just a piece of glass illuminating colored pixels. It is your judgment, your attachment to those pixels, that gives them the power to drain your soul. Epictetus, the slave who became a master of Stoicism, said it clearly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The Shaolin master, sitting in deep meditation, realizes the exact same truth. The physical pain in his legs after hours of sitting is just a sensation. It is just raw data traveling through the nervous system. The suffering only begins when the mind categorizes that sensation as bad and demands that it stops. When you separate the event from your judgment of the event, you strip the modern world of its power over you. You look at a massive financial failure, and instead of saying, "My life is over," you strip away the judgment. You say, "The numbers in the bank account are lower. This is a fact. Now, what is my next move?" You look at the agonizing process of building a business or mastering a skill, and instead of saying, "This is too hard," you strip away the judgment. You say, "This requires effort. Effort is the currency of mastery. I will pay the price." This level of radical detachment leads to a supreme state of psychological power. The Japanese samurai, warriors who lived with the constant, hovering presence of death, had a name for this state. They called it Fudoshin, the unmovable mind. Fudoshin is the ultimate manifestation of the inner citadel. It is a state of maintaining perfect stillness, absolute clarity, and total non-attachment, regardless of extreme external pressure, mortal danger, or internal doubt. Imagine a deep, ancient lake hidden in the mountains. When a massive boulder is thrown into the lake, there is a violent splash. The water ripples. The surface is momentarily disturbed. But the depths of the lake, the dark, silent depths, miles below the surface, they do not move. They remain perfectly still, absorbing the impact, and within moments, the surface returns to a perfect, glass-like reflection of the sky. That is Fudoshin. The unmovable mind does not mean you feel nothing. It does not mean you become a heartless robot. It means that when the demon of doubt whispers in your ear, when the modern chaos screams in your face, when the blade of adversity swings at your neck, you see it, you acknowledge it. But you do not move from your center. You do not panic. You do not react with the chaotic, erratic energy of the modern victim. You act with the cold, precise, calculated energy of a master. In the modern world, the blade swinging at your neck is rarely made of steel. It is the crushing pressure of a deadline. It is the intense social anxiety of a confrontation. It is the terrifying realization that you are wasting your life and you are running out of time. The weak man reacts to these modern blades by running away, hiding in the comforting embrace of digital anesthesia. The man with an unmovable mind stares at the blade, accepts its presence, and steps inside its arc to deliver his own strike. But this unmovable mind is not a gift. It is not something you are born with. It is not something you can download, purchase, or absorb by passively listening to a screen. It must be forged. And the forge is a place of profound, intentional suffering. Look at the historical crucible of the great masters. Look at the warrior monks of the Shaolin temple. Look at the ancient philosophers of Greece and Rome. They did not just sit in comfortable rooms thinking about abstract concepts. They subjected their bodies and their minds to agonizing physical and social conditioning. The monk carries buckets of water up thousands of freezing stone steps, day after day, year after year. He holds painful martial stances until his muscles tear and his nervous system screams for mercy. The Stoic philosopher deliberately sleeps on the hard, cold floor. He walks barefoot in the snow. He intentionally wears ridiculous clothing to invite the mockery and the laughter of the public. Why? Why do they actively seek out pain? It is not because they are masochists. It is not merely to build physical fortitude. A strong body is completely useless if it is commanded by a weak mind. They endure the crucible to forcefully subjugate the mind's biological desire to surrender. They are engaging in a violent psychological war against their own inner weakness. Every time the monk holds the stance for one more agonizing second, he is sending a message to his animal brain. He is saying, "You do not control me. I am the master. Yi commands you." Every time the Stoic endures the laughter of the crowd without a single flinch, he is sending a message to his fragile ego. He is saying, "Your opinions are ghosts. They have no power in my citadel." This is the process of forging, and this is where we must make a vital, life-altering distinction. A distinction that the modern alpha male culture completely misunderstands. You must understand the difference between hardness and iron. The modern man, when he tries to become strong, attempts to become hard. He puffs out his chest, he acts aggressively, he suppresses his emotions, he builds a rigid, inflexible shell around his fragile ego. He walks through the world trying to prove to everyone that nothing bothers him. But hardness is an illusion. Hardness is brittle. Think of a pane of thick glass. It feels hard to the touch. It seems impenetrable. But if you strike it with a sudden, concentrated impact, if life delivers a severe, unexpected blow, a sudden divorce, a financial ruin, a devastating betrayal, the glass shatters into a million irreparable pieces. The hard man breaks because he has no flexibility. His ego is too rigid to absorb the impact of true tragedy. The monk does not seek to be hard. The monk seeks to be iron. Think of a blade forged by a master swordsmith. It begins as raw, ugly ore. It is thrust into the blinding heat of the fire until it glows white. Then it is placed on the anvil. It is beaten. It is smashed by the heavy hammer. It is folded over on itself, beaten again, thrust back into the fire, and suddenly plunged into freezing water. This brutal process changes the molecular structure of the metal. It burns away the impurities. The finished sword is not merely hard, it is resilient. If you strike an iron blade against a shield, it does not shatter like glass. It bends. It absorbs the immense shock of the impact, it flexes, and then it immediately whips back to its true, perfectly straight form. The iron mind is not a mind that never feels pain. It is a mind that absorbs the immense heat of adversity, bends under the crushing weight of tragedy, and is actually forged stronger by the hammer of the world. The brittle man hides from the hammer. The Iron Man places his own head on the anvil and says, "Strike." He knows that every hardship, every failure, every moment of agonizing digital withdrawal is just another strike of the hammer, another fold in the steel, another impurity burned away in the fire. This is the ancient principle. Yi, the inner citadel, Fudoshin, the crucible. This is the blueprint of the unmovable mind. But knowing the blueprint is meaningless if you do not understand the enemy trying to burn it down. To build the citadel, we must first look outside the walls. We must analyze the unseen forces actively trying to keep you weak. The architecture of the modern world is not an accident. It is a perfectly designed, highly efficient machine built to harvest your weakness. And the invisible war for your soul is already raging. Section 3. The Modern Enemy. To see this invisible war, you must first open your eyes to the battlefield you are standing on. Look around you. Look at the walls of the modern world. They are not built of stone. They are not lined with barbed wire. They are not guarded by men with rifles. The prison you inhabit is far more insidious. It is a velvet prison. A perfectly climate-controlled, ergonomically designed, artificially illuminated trap built with one singular, terrifying purpose: to eliminate all friction from your human experience. We must begin by dissecting the hyper-accessibility of comfort. For the entirety of human history, survival required an immense expenditure of vital energy, your chi. If you wanted to eat, you had to hunt, forage, or harvest. You had to face the elements. You had to bleed. If you wanted dopamine, the neurochemical reward for accomplishment, you had to actually accomplish something difficult. You had to build a shelter that could withstand the winter. You had to defend your tribe. You had to master a complex physical craft over decades of agonizing repetition. The biological reward system of the brain was a sacred economy, and the currency was sweat, pain, and time. The modern world has completely shattered this ancient economy. It has hacked the source code of your brain and flooded the market with counterfeit currency. You do not need to hunt. You press a glowing button on a piece of glass, and high-calorie, hyper-palatable food is delivered to your door by a stranger. You do not need to seek out a mate through the terrifying crucible of social rejection and self-improvement. You swipe your thumb across a screen and simulate the evolutionary thrill of infinite romantic options. You do not need to conquer a mountain or defeat an enemy to feel victorious. You log into a virtual simulation and achieve an empty, pixelated triumph in a video game. This hyper-accessibility of comfort is not a luxury. It is a poison. It completely bypasses the evolutionary need for struggle. And why is this catastrophic? Because the human mind is a muscle that feeds on friction. Friction is the whetstone of the soul. Without the heavy, abrasive resistance of the stone, the iron blade of your mind cannot be sharpened. It just rusts in the scabbard. By removing all friction from your daily life, the modern machine starves your mind of the very resistance it requires to grow. Your willpower atrophies. Your unbreakable intention withers away into a pathetic, flaccid whisper. You become entirely dependent on the machine to regulate your internal state. You are no longer a sovereign warrior. You are a biological battery plugged into a digital matrix, being slowly drained of your life force while you sleep in a bed of synthetic comfort. But the machine does not stop at physical comfort. It must also neutralize your spirit. It must ensure you never rise up and attempt to break the velvet bars of your cell. It achieves this through the culture of victimhood. Look at the modern hierarchy of status. In the ancient world, the tribe elevated the Stoic. They revered the man who carried the heaviest burden without a single complaint. They worshipped the conqueror, the builder, the monk who stood unmoving in the snow. Today, the architecture of society has completely inverted this hierarchy. We now live in a culture that actively rewards complaints over conquests. We have placed the victim on a pedestal and forged a new, toxic currency out of suffering and fragility. The louder you broadcast your trauma, the more you externalize your failures, the more validation, attention, and social status you receive. The algorithms of society incentivize a psychological framework that begs you to relinquish your agency. They tell you, it is not your fault that you are weak. It is the economy. It is the system. It is your childhood. It is your genetics. You are oppressed by invisible forces, and therefore you are excused from the brutal mandate of self-mastery. Do you not see the sheer, terrifying brilliance of this trap? When you adopt the identity of the victim, you commit spiritual suicide. By externalizing the blame for your misery, you are simultaneously externalizing the power to fix it. If your failure is the fault of the world, then you must sit in the dirt and wait for the world to change before you can stand up. You hand the keys of your inner citadel directly to your enemies, and then you weep because you are locked inside. The modern machine actively encourages young men to lay down their swords, to stop fighting, to embrace their weakness, and to wait for a savior that will never, ever come. Because a man who believes he is a helpless victim will never forge an iron mindset. He will never rebel. He will simply consume. And consumption is what the algorithmic demons demand. Which brings us to the most violent front of the invisible war. The deliberate, algorithmic manipulation of your nervous system. The platforms you scroll through every single day are not neutral tools. They are not public squares. They are not entertainment. They are apex predators, engineered by thousands of the most brilliant psychological architects on the planet, backed by billions of dollars in supercomputing power. And you are the prey. These algorithms do not care about your happiness. They do not care about your growth. They care about one metric alone, the hijacking of your attention. To keep your eyes locked on the glowing screen, they must bypass your rational mind and strike directly at the most ancient, primal layers of your brain. They strike at your amygdala. They have realized that a calm, focused, stoic man will put his phone down and go build his life. But an outraged man, a terrified man, an angry man, but he will keep scrolling forever. Therefore, the machine deliberately feeds you a constant, unending stream of outrage, tribal conflict, and existential threat. It shows you the political enemy destroying your country. It shows you the economic collapse looming on the horizon. It shows you the curated, infuriating hypocrisy of strangers you have never met. It artificially triggers your ancestral fight-or-flight response, hundreds of times a day. Your adrenal glands dump cortisol into your blood. Your heart races. Your chi flares up, hot and chaotic, preparing your body to fight a tiger or flee a burning village. But there is no tiger. There is no fire. There is only you, sitting alone in a dark room, staring at a piece of glass, clenching your jaw. This is the ultimate digital vampirism. The machine harvests your vital life force by forcing you to fight phantom wars in a digital void. You expend immense amounts of spiritual energy being angry at things you cannot control, cannot change, and that often do not even objectively exist. The result is a profound, devastating state of spiritual exhaustion. You wake up tired. You walk through the day in a thick, dissociative brain fog. You feel a heavy, lingering dread in your chest. You are drained because your life force is being systematically siphoned away by the glowing rectangles in your pocket. You are being farmed for your outrage. And in this state of exhaustion, you become entirely easily manipulated. A weak, exhausted mind cannot forge iron. It can only seek the path of least resistance. But even if you manage to escape the outrage, the modern world has another trap waiting to paralyze you. The paralysis of infinite choice. The ancient monk, standing at the gates of the Shaolin temple, had one single, terrifyingly clear path. If he was accepted, he would spend the next 3 decades doing the exact same thing. He would carry water, chop wood, practice his forms, and meditate. He was locked into a singular, narrow corridor of reality, and because the corridor was narrow, his energy was concentrated like a laser. He went endlessly deep into one discipline. He dug a well 1,000 feet deep and found the pure water of mastery. The modern man is cursed with the exact opposite. You stand in a massive, sterile hallway with 1,000,000 open doors. You have infinite career paths. You can be an entrepreneur, a coder, a creator, a trader. You have infinite entertainment options, tens of thousands of movies, endless streams of music, millions of hours of content. You have infinite romantic options, geographically untethered, swiping through thousands of faces a week. We are told this is freedom. We are told that infinite choice is the pinnacle of human liberation. It is a lie. Infinite choice is an existential curse. It is a psychological labyrinth designed to destroy deep commitment. When you have infinite options, the mind becomes terrified of making the wrong choice. The fear of missing out, the phantom pain of the paths not taken, haunts every decision you make. You open one door, walk 3 steps down the path, encounter the first inevitable obstacle of friction, and immediately panic. You think, perhaps this is the wrong path. Perhaps the door next to this one is easier. Perhaps I should keep my options open. And so, you turn back. You retreat to the hallway. You open another door. You take 3 steps. You face friction. You retreat again. You dig 1,000 wells that are all 1 foot deep, and you die of thirst in the desert. The modern era's endless options erode the capacity for sustained focus on a single difficult path. You become a dilettante, a tourist in your own life. You skim the surface of everything and master absolutely nothing. And because you master nothing, you build no confidence, no internal structure, no iron. You remain soft, malleable, and perpetually lost in the shallow waters of the modern world, terrified of the deep ocean. This paralysis is compounded by the final, most deeply ingrained poison of the modern psyche. The myth of entitlement, the deserving complex. Listen to the language of the modern man. I deserve to be happy. I deserve a high-paying job. I deserve an incredible partner. I deserve to find my passion. Where did this absurd, arrogant delusion come from? Look up at the night sky. Look at the cold, silent, ancient stars. Look at the vast, indifferent cosmos that stretches out for billions of light years in every direction. The universe owes you absolutely nothing. The universe does not care about your feelings, your dreams, or your fragile ego. The expectation of fairness is a primary source of modern mental weakness and bitterness. When you operate on the assumption that the world owes you a smooth path, every single obstacle becomes an insult. When you face rejection, failure, or tragedy, you do not view it as the natural friction of existence. You view it as a cosmic injustice. You view it as a violation of your rights. This entitlement breeds a deep, acidic resentment. Resentment is the rust that eats the iron of the mind. It turns men bitter, cynical, and pathetic. The ancient Stoic understood the brutal truth of the cosmos. He did not demand fairness. He did not expect justice from the chaos of the world. He accepted his fate, amor fati, and took absolute responsibility for how he responded to it. He knew that the mountain does not owe the climber a clear path to the summit. The storm does not owe the sailor a safe harbor. You are born into a brutal, unforgiving arena. The only things you deserve are the things you can forge with your own 2 hands, your own intellect, and your own unbroken will. Until you violently eradicate the deserving complex from your psychology, you will remain a fragile child throwing a tantrum in a universe that cannot hear you. When we step back and observe this entire architecture, the hyper-accessibility of comfort starving the mind of friction, the culture of victimhood rewarding weakness and externalizing blame, the algorithmic predators harvesting your vital energy through synthetic outrage, the labyrinth of infinite choice destroying your ability to commit to the depths, and the myth of entitlement poisoning your soul with resentment, we arrive at the ultimate consequence. We arrive at the tragic reality of the modern man. Look at the result of this grand, insidious experiment. We have bred a generation of men made of glass, men who possess no internal citadel, men whose yi is completely fractured. At the very first sign of genuine adversity, a financial collapse, a broken heart, a public humiliation, or even just the terrifying silence of being alone with their own thoughts, they break. They shatter into 1,000 pieces. They do not plant their feet and draw their swords. They immediately retreat. They run back into the dark, comforting embrace of the velvet prison. They seek out the digital anesthetics. They numb the existential pain of their weakness with endless hours of pornography, draining their sacred masculine energy into a dark screen. They numb the dread of their wasted potential with mind-altering substances, junk food, and the hypnotic, infinite scroll of the algorithm. They become ghosts, pale, exhausted, hollowed-out vessels, wandering aimlessly through a digital hallucination, completely disconnected from the raw, vibrating, powerful reality of the physical world. They are slaves who do not even realize they are wearing chains, because the chains are made of dopamine and the prison cells are lined with velvet. This is the enemy. This is the chaotic, predatory digital landscape you must navigate. It is a machine perfectly designed to consume you. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot ask it for mercy. If you remain passive, you will be digested by it, just like millions of other forgotten men. To survive this, to escape the gravity of this modern decay, you must do something radical. You cannot simply use a life hack. You cannot use a productivity app. You must adopt a framework of absolute, uncompromising rigor. You must step off the path of the modern consumer and step onto the ancient path of the warrior monk. You must implement the protocol. Section 4. The monk's protocol. The solution. The protocol is not a list of suggestions. It is not a morning routine designed to make you feel productive. It is a martial art for the mind. It is a deliberate, violent rebellion against the architecture of modern weakness. To rebuild the citadel, you must systematically subject yourself to controlled, intentional friction. You must become the architect of your own hardship, applying strict, non-negotiable daily disciplines to forge the iron. There are 4 pillars to this protocol, 4 rituals of the modern monk. Listen carefully. Ritual number 1. The fast of the senses. We call this digital asceticism. Your mind is currently overfed and malnourished. It is bloated with thousands of images, sounds, opinions, and notifications, yet it is starving for pure, unadulterated reality. To cure a man who has been poisoned by the modern world, you must first stop feeding him the poison. You must induce a state of absolute understimulation. Every single day, for 30 uninterrupted minutes, you will enter the void. You will go into a room. You will close the door. You will draw the blinds so that the room is pitched in darkness. You will leave your smartphone, your smartwatch, and your screens in another room. You will not play cinematic music. You will not listen to white noise. You will not read a book. You will not write in a journal. You will sit on the floor, perfectly still. You will have absolutely nothing but your own thoughts. For the modern man, this is the most terrifying room in the world. When you sit in the dark silence, the demons will immediately begin to scream. Your brain, addicted to the constant drip of dopamine, will panic. It will manufacture an itch on your face. It will make your leg bounce. It will suddenly remind you of an urgent email you forgot to send. It will flood your consciousness with anxiety, phantom arguments, and an overwhelming, suffocating sense of boredom. The mind will beg you to stand up. It will tell you that this is a waste of time. It will hallucinate productivity just to get you to open the door and look at a screen. You must not move. You must sit there like a stone Buddha at the bottom of the ocean. Let the demons scream. Let the chaos swirl around you. You are observing the shattered fragments of your own psychology. By forcing yourself to sit in the absolute void, you are training your yi to anchor itself in the present moment. You confront your internal chaos. You navigate the storm of your own anxiety, and ultimately, by refusing to react, you conquer it. You starve the parasitic entities of distraction until they wither and die in the darkness. When you emerge from those 30 minutes, the digital world will no longer control you. You will have tasted the pure, cold water of your own sovereign consciousness. Ritual number 2, the daily crucible. This is the ritual of physical subjugation. You cannot forge an iron mind in a body that is completely pampered by the velvet prison. The mind and the flesh are intimately connected. If the flesh dictates your limits, the mind will always surrender. Therefore, every single day, you must commit to one highly demanding physical task that you actively detest. Understand this clearly. The primary goal of this ritual is not physical fitness. Fitness is merely a byproduct. The goal is psychological warfare against your own biological desire for comfort. It might be stepping into a shower of freezing, ice-cold water first thing in the morning. It might be a grueling, suffocating session of cardiovascular exertion that makes your lungs burn and your vision blur. It might be placing a heavy iron bar on your back and squatting until your central nervous system begs for mercy. The specific vehicle of the suffering does not matter. What matters is the friction. There will be a moment, every single day, right before you step into the cold water or right before you pick up the heavy weight. In that moment, your animal brain will generate a perfectly logical excuse. It will say, "You are tired today. You slept poorly. You can skip just this one day. You have already worked hard." That voice is the enemy. That voice is the architect of your fragility. The daily crucible is the arena where you hunt that voice and destroy it. When the voice says no, your yi must instantly, violently override it with go. You step into the freezing water. The shock hits your system. Your breathing panics. Your flesh screams to escape. And you stand there. You breathe slowly. You subjugate the flesh. You are teaching your nervous system a new law of reality. The body does not make the decisions. The mind makes the decisions. You are training your mind to instantly obey your supreme command, regardless of the physical trauma. You are building the unmovable mind, one agonizing repetition at a time. Ritual number 3, the armor of indifference. The ancient Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. The modern man is crippled by anxiety. He is terrified of the future, terrified of losing his job, his status, his money, his partner, his health. Because he is terrified of losing what he has, he operates from a position of profound weakness. He becomes a slave to his possessions and a hostage to his own future. To forge iron, you must become untouchable. To become untouchable, you must systematically visualize the loss of absolutely everything you hold dear. This is a dark, heavy, and visceral meditation. Close your eyes and visualize the total collapse of your life. Imagine your bank account draining to zero. Imagine the eviction notice on your door. Imagine the humiliation of your peers looking down on you as a failure. Imagine your reputation destroyed in the digital public square. Imagine the people you love turning their backs on you and walking away. Imagine a doctor sitting across from you, handing you a terminal diagnosis. Do not just think about these things conceptually. Feel them. Feel the visceral, agonizing dread in your stomach. Feel the cold sweat on your skin. Walk through the ashes of your ruined life in your mind's eye. And then, when you are standing in the absolute center of your worst nightmares, look inside your inner citadel. Realize that your core consciousness, your yi, remains perfectly intact. Realize that even if they take your money, your status, your comfort, and your health, they cannot take your ability to choose your response. They cannot take your honor. They cannot take your unmovable mind. By repeatedly exposing yourself to the absolute worst-case scenarios, you strip away the paralyzing anxiety of losing them. You realize that you can survive the abyss. And when a man is no longer afraid of the abyss, the petty, trivial threats of the modern world completely lose their power over him. An angry email cannot hurt a man who has already visualized his own death. A financial setback cannot break a man who has already practiced living in the dirt. You wrap yourself in the armor of indifference. The world can strike you, but the blade will shatter against the steel. Ritual number 4. The gatekeeper's veto. We now move to the realm of cognitive interception. Your mind is a fortress, but a fortress is useless if the gates are left unguarded. Every day, thousands of thoughts attempt to enter your citadel. Most of these thoughts are weak. They are reactive. They are parasitic scripts installed by the algorithms, by society, or by your own traumatic past. You must take absolute, authoritarian ownership of your attention. You must post a ruthless swordsman at the gates of your consciousness. This is the rule of the gatekeeper's veto. You have exactly 3 seconds to identify a weak thought and neutralize it before it takes root in your psyche. A thought enters. I can't do this. It's too difficult. 1, 2. The swordsman swings. The veto is applied. You intercept the thought. You do not argue with it. You do not analyze why you feel that way. You do not indulge in self-pity. You mentally isolate the thought, label it as an intruder, and violently expel it from your citadel. You immediately replace it with an iron directive. It is difficult, and that is exactly why I will do it. A thought enters. Look at that person's success on social media. My life is a failure. 1, 2. The swordsman swings. You intercept the poison. You neutralize the jealousy. You replace it with the directive. Their path is an illusion. My path is the forge. Eyes forward. This is an exhausting, aggressive, full-time job. In the beginning, you will have to swing the sword 1,000 times a day. But you must be ruthless. If you let a weak thought survive past 3 seconds, it becomes an emotion. If it becomes an emotion, it becomes an action. If it becomes an action, it becomes your destiny. Slay the weak thoughts at the gate. Tolerate absolutely zero subversion within your own ranks. Do not mistake these 4 rituals for mere philosophical exercises. We are not just playing with metaphors. We are talking about the hardcore biological mechanics of neuroplasticity. When you implement this protocol, you are physically rewiring the biological architecture of your brain. Every time you sit in the dark and refuse to look at your phone, every time you step into the freezing water, every time you slay a weak thought at the gate, you are firing a new neural pathway. In the brain, neurons that fire together wire together. For years, your brain has been wired for retreat. The pathway of instant gratification, the pathway of avoidance, the pathway of the victim. These roads in your brain are currently massive, paved, 8-lane highways. Electricity travels down them effortlessly. The pathway of the unmovable mind, the pathway of iron discipline, is currently a tiny, overgrown dirt trail hidden in the dark woods of your subconscious. The protocol is the machete. By executing these rigid rituals every single day, you are hacking through the brush. You are paving a new road. As you force the electricity of your consciousness down the difficult path over and over again, the biological substance known as myelin wraps around those new neural circuits, insulating them, making them faster, thicker, and permanent. Simultaneously, the old highways of weakness, starved of use, begin to physically decay. They wither. They break apart. You are literally shifting your brain's default psychological response from retreat to aggressive engagement. You are using the fire of discipline to melt down the neural architecture of a slave and recast it into the neural architecture of a master. But for this alchemy to work, there is one final, absolute law, the mandate of silence. The forging of iron requires immense heat and immense pressure. If you open the door of the furnace, the heat escapes, the pressure drops, the iron does not transform. In the modern world, the door of the furnace is your mouth, and the release of pressure is social media. When you start waking up early, when you start taking ice baths, when you start meditating in the dark, your ego will scream at you to tell the world. It will beg you to take a photo of the cold water and post it. It will beg you to tweet a Stoic quote. It will beg you to broadcast your grind to your peers to harvest cheap, synthetic validation. You must not speak a word of this to anyone. This training must be done in absolute, terrifying secrecy. When you broadcast your discipline to the world, your brain receives a premature spike of dopamine. You get the psychological reward of being perceived as a warrior without having actually fought the war. The moment you post it, the internal pressure vanishes. The heat leaks out of the furnace. Your discipline becomes a performance for the crowd rather than a sacred pact with your own soul. The true monk works in the shadows. He sweeps the temple in the dark. He bleeds where no one can see him. He carries the heavy stone in absolute silence. Let them wonder why you have changed. Let them wonder why your posture is straighter, why your eyes are piercing, why their insults no longer affect you, and why the chaos of the world seems to break around you like water around a stone. Do not explain your yi. Do not explain your citadel. Keep your mouth closed. Keep the furnace sealed. Let the pressure build inside you until the internal transformation is so violent, so undeniable, that you do not need to announce your strength. Your mere presence will announce it for you. The protocol is the fire. You have the blueprint. You know the rituals. But rituals are just movements until they are infused with purpose. The time has come to take the final step. The time has come to destroy who you were and embrace what you are about to become. Section 5. The Ascension, the Conclusion. To take this final step, you must fully comprehend the violence of the transformation required. You cannot simply layer the iron mindset over your existing personality. You cannot take the fragile, excuse-laden, dopamine-addicted ghost of your current identity and merely hand it a sword. A peasant wearing a king's armor will simply collapse under the weight of the steel. The old self cannot be reformed. It cannot be negotiated with. It must be eradicated. This is the necessary death of the old self. Look inward at the creature that has brought you to this point of misery. Look at the man who hits the snooze button. Look at the man who makes a promise to himself on Sunday night, only to break it by Monday morning. Look at the man who surrenders to the digital void, seeking the warm, numb comfort of the screen, the moment he feels the slightest pressure of reality. For years, you have protected this man. You have acted as his defense attorney. You have rationalized his failures. You have blamed his environment, his genetics, his upbringing, and his bad luck. You have fed his addictions and whispered sweet, toxic lies to him in the dark, telling him that tomorrow he will magically be different. You have allowed a parasite to live rent-free inside your inner citadel. It is time to build a funeral pyre in the center of your mind. You must drag that weak, complaining, pathetic version of yourself to the altar of your yi. You must look him in the eye. Acknowledge that he survived the best he could in a chaotic, predatory world. And then, with an unshakable hand, you must strike the match. The ego will scream. As the flames of discipline begin to burn away the comfort, your old identity will fight for its life. It will panic. It will tell you that this monastic path is too cold, too lonely, too harsh. It will disguise itself as your own inner voice, begging you to return to the velvet prison, arguing that you are losing your authenticity. Let it burn. Stand before the fire and watch the weakness turn to ash. The death of the old self is not a tragedy. It is the ultimate liberation. It is the clearing of the throne room. You are burning away the rotting wood to make space for the bedrock of iron. And as the smoke clears, as you step out of the ashes of who you used to be, you will open your eyes to a completely new universe. A universe where the fundamental laws of physics have been rewritten by your own consciousness. This is the paradigm shift of pain. For your entire existence, you have been indoctrinated by the modern world to believe that suffering is an anomaly. You have been taught that pain is a glitch in the system, an injustice inflicted upon you by a cruel, random universe. Because of this lie, you spent your life running. You medicated the pain. You distracted yourself from it. You drank it away, swiped it away, and consumed until the pain was muffled by a thick layer of synthetic static. But as the iron sets in your mind, the illusion shatters. You realize the supreme, undeniable truth of the cosmos. Pain is not a glitch. Pain is the master teacher. It is the mandatory currency required for any profound personal evolution. The universe does not trade in the fiat currency of your intentions, your wishes, or your complaints. The cosmic ledger does not care about what you feel you deserve. The ledger only balances when it is paid in the heavy gold coins of voluntary suffering, deep friction, and agonizing persistence. When you truly embrace the iron mindset, your fundamental relationship with adversity is completely, violently inverted. You no longer look up at the sky and ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You look at the obstacle and ask, "What is this trying to forge within me?" You look at the tragedy, the heartbreak, the financial ruin, the brutal physical exhaustion, and the terrifying silence of the void. And you no longer see a predator trying to destroy you. You see the hammer of the cosmos. Every time you are struck down, every time the pressure threatens to crack your skull, the hammer is merely folding the steel. It is driving out the microscopic impurities of doubt and fear. When you view pain as the whetstone of your soul, the world completely loses its ability to harm you. No one can ever hurt a man who uses their attacks to sharpen his own blade. The more brutal the grind, the more unforgiving the friction, the sharper the edge of your yi becomes. You transmute the chaotic, dark energy of your suffering into pure, glowing, directional chi. You become an alchemist of hardship. And what happens to a man who masters this alchemy? What happens to a man who is sharp enough to cut through the illusions of the modern matrix? He becomes perfectly, terrifyingly quiet. Observe the modern landscape of masculinity. It is deafeningly loud. The weak are constantly screaming. They posture aggressively on social media. They flex synthetic muscles. They lease expensive cars to impress strangers. They shout their opinions into the digital void, desperate for likes, desperate for retweets, desperate for any external signal that they matter. They roar because they are terrified. They are hollow drums, loudest because there is absolutely nothing inside them. The iron mind does not scream. The monk has no need for volume. When you have truly conquered yourself, when you have survived the crucible of the dark room, the freezing water, and the silent meditation, you achieve the quiet power of the void. This is a state of supreme, unshakable confidence that borders on the mystical. You completely lose the desire to announce your strength. You feel zero need to aggressively posture, to win petty arguments on the internet, or to prove your dominance to anyone. The desperate hunger for external validation simply burns away, leaving only the cold, hyper-dense core of absolute self-belief. Your silent presence alone becomes a heavy, physical force in the room. When you walk into a chaotic environment, the energy violently shifts. The frantic, nervous, scattered chi of the modern men around you suddenly feels the immense gravitational pull of your stillness. You become a black hole of discipline in a universe of scattered light. You speak softly, if you speak at all. But when you do speak, your words carry the devastating weight of an anvil, because they are backed by the invisible, monumental structure of your daily, voluntary suffering. You do not react to insults. You do not rise to provocations. You look at the angry, reactive masses the way an ancient snow-capped mountain looks at a passing thunderstorm. The clouds may rage, the lightning may strike the rocks, the wind may howl, but the mountain does not bow. The mountain simply remains. But do not mistake this profound silence for apathy. Do not mistake this stoic detachment for a selfish retreat from the world. Many men embark on this brutal path merely to save themselves. They want to escape their depression, cure their brain fog, and conquer their personal weakness. That is a noble beginning. But if it ends there, it is a failure of the highest order. If you forge an indestructible razor-sharp sword and then lock yourself in a room just to stare at it, you have deeply insulted the steel. You must awaken to the crushing responsibility of the strong. Forging an iron mind is not a pursuit for your own selfish personal salvation. It is a biological, spiritual, and historical duty. Look outside the walls of your citadel. Look at the state of the modern world. The world is rapidly decaying. The digital demons are devouring the minds of the next generation. Millions of men are drowning in a sea of synthetic estrogen, cheap dopamine, infinite pornography, and algorithmic outrage. Chaos is no longer a distant threat at the borders of civilization. The chaos is sitting in the living room. It is radiating from the glowing screens in the hands of children. In an increasingly chaotic, decaying world, the weak will inevitably panic. The weak will turn on each other. The weak will surrender their freedoms to tyranny for the illusion of safety. The weak will break under the pressure of the coming storms. They desperately need an anchor. They desperately need a pillar. Your supreme duty is to become that pillar of absolute stability and unbreakable order. You are doing this for your bloodline. You are doing this for your family. You are doing this for your community. When the inevitable crisis hits, when the economy shatters, when tragedy strikes your home, when the digital infrastructure fails and the illusions of modern safety evaporate, your family will not look to a politician. They will not look to an influencer on a screen. They will look to you, and in their terrified eyes, they will ask a silent, desperate question: are we going to survive? If you have lived a life of soft comfort, if your mind is still made of brittle glass, you will shatter right in front of them. You will add to the panic. You will fail them when they need you most. But if you have walked the golden path, if you have spent years sitting in the absolute darkness, wrestling with your own demons, if you have repeatedly plunged your physical vessel into the freezing water of the crucible, if you have mastered the gatekeeper's veto and secured your inner citadel, you will look back at them with the unmovable mind of the ancient monk. You will not panic. You will not project fear. You will simply stand there, rooted deep into the earth, emanating a profound, immovable aura of order. And without you having to speak a single word, they will know that they are safe. Understand this universal law. Weakness is the ultimate form of selfishness, because a weak man requires the entire world to bend down and carry him. Strength is the ultimate act of service, because a truly strong man bends down and carries the world. You are not forging this iron to elevate yourself above others. You are forging this iron so that your shoulders are broad enough to carry the weight of those who cannot carry themselves. But heed this final, Terrifying warning, traveler. Do not fall into the ultimate trap of the modern consumer. The consumer has been trained to seek a finish line. The consumer wants to buy a product, complete a 30-day challenge, receive a digital certificate, and then return to his comfortable, mindless slumber. There is no finish line. There is no graduation day from the monastic path. This is the eternal path. The fundamental laws of thermodynamics dictate that all structures in the universe will eventually break down into absolute chaos if energy is not continuously applied. Entropy is the ultimate enemy, and rust never sleeps. The digital demons do not give up. They are immortal, and they are infinitely patient. They will wait for you to achieve a modicum of discipline. They will wait for you to build your business, get your body in shape, and find a brief moment of peace. They will wait for that exact, fatal moment when your ego pats you on the back and whispers, "You have made it. You are strong now. You can relax." The exact second you drop your guard, the exact second you stop swinging the heavy hammer, the rust begins to form on the blade. The velvet prison begins to quietly rebuild its walls around you. The fire of discipline must be aggressively stoked and maintained every single day, without a single exception, until the day your physical vessel expires and returns to the earth. You must wake up tomorrow morning, and you must sit in the dark. You must wake up 10 years from now, and you must step into the freezing cold. You must be on your deathbed, and you must still be actively slaying the weak thoughts at the gates of your citadel. Is this exhausting? Yes. Is it a brutally unfair burden to bear while the rest of the world sleeps in comfortable ignorance? The universe does not care. But within this eternal, relentless struggle, you will discover something profound. You will discover a strange, divine joy. It is the joy of the mythic king pushing the boulder up the endless mountain, suddenly realizing that the act of pushing itself is the entire purpose of his existence. You will fall deeply in love with the hammer. You will fall in love with the scorching heat of the forge, because you will realize that as long as you are forging the iron, you are truly alive. As long as you are actively fighting the chaos, you are completely, unbreakably free. The blueprint has been delivered. The philosophy of the ancients has been unearthed from the shadows and placed directly into your hands. The theoretical phase is over. The time for listening has ended. The brutal, unforgiving reality begins right now. The massive, heavy wooden doors of the monk temple are slowly opening. Outside those doors, the digital chaos is howling like a hurricane. The algorithms are hunting for your attention. The weak are sleeping in their velvet cells. The world is screaming for a savior. Step out into the storm. Do not look up at the sky and ask for a lighter burden. Demand broader shoulders. Do not ask the universe for a safer world. Become the most dangerous, disciplined, uncontrollable force within it. Let the masses keep their cheap dopamine. Let them keep their toxic positivity, their daily affirmations, and their fragile egos. Let them keep their victimhood and their invisible chains. You take the heavy iron. Step into the blinding chaos of the modern world with a mind built like an ancient, impenetrable fortress. Untouchable, unbreakable, entirely your own. Ready for the fire. Ready for war.